My name is David Magdeo, and on behalf of ADOC, which is the Asian American Documentary Network, and Open Your Eyes and Think MF, which is a resource and a platform for marginalized filmmakers, BIPOC, LGBTQ, and those who feel like they've been marginalized. We are so pleased to be here to have this conversation with two amazing Asian American documentary filmmakers. This year has been a great year for Asian American documentary filmmakers. We have 18 features and 5 shorts that will this year be awards contenders. So today's conversation is with Hao Wu, whose film this year is 76 Days, and Leo Chiang, whose film is Our Time Machine. Please welcome Hao Wu and Leo Chiang.
Hi, Leo.
Hey, how are you?
Good, good. Yeah. Good morning to you in Taipei. I assume that's where you are.
Yeah, yes. So how are things?
Good. I think, 76 Days, we just released a film via Dogwolf internationally. So I finished that round of press interviews last week. So this week I'm having a little bit more time to watch other people's films. It's nice to catch up.
Yeah, I think for us, we're on a different timeline. This is coming up on almost like a year and a half of seeing Our Time Machine out in the world. So yeah, no, it's still fun and exciting to see new audiences discover the film for sure. So
Yeah.
but I know that we've known each other for a long time, and I was really excited to see the work that you've done on 76 Days, and for me particularly how you put the material together into this really compelling and very very big, but at the same time very intimate and personal story. So I actually am really curious to want to hear from you, like what some of the decision making process is in terms of setting out to put this story together after the footage that you got.
Yeah, I think before we get there, actually, I think I was thinking for both of us, we were not the sort of like the initiators of the project necessarily. So for me, I started researching a film about coronavirus back in early February. And I reached out to over a dozen filmmakers who had started filming in Wuhan. And through that process, I found 2 filmmakers who've been filming at 4 different hospitals. I found their footage to be absolutely amazing. I reached out to them and talked to them. That's how we started collaborating. But in the meantime, that you didn't really start from day one with Our Time Machine as well. Maybe we can, share a little bit more stories about how we got started with this project. Yes, how did you get involved with Our Time Machines?
Yeah, for me, I got involved because I have been one of the mentors for the CNX Chinese Documentary Pitching Forum, which takes place here in Taipei every September. And Young, my directing partner, who initiated the project, actually came to pitch Our Time Machine, and he had been shooting for a couple months, and he had 3 minutes of footage, and when he pitched, and I was profoundly moved by the pitch. I actually, couldn't necessarily even articulate why I was so moved, but I was. And actually, Jean, who's your producer, who's our EP, Jean Chen, came up. She and I came up to Young at the same time, and told him that we want to find a way to help him. And I actually have this really interesting, sort of backstory with Young. I had led a group of USC students to Beijing in 2014 or 2013. I can't remember exactly, at the Communications University of China, which was where he studied. And he was one of my students for a few weeks in a summer session. So it all felt like it was meant to be, that he was supposed to show up at this moment with this project that spoke so deeply to me. and that he needed somebody to, kind of help him because he was so young and so it was very much of an emerging filmmaker at the time. So that's how I got involved in that project. So, but I actually remember you actually calling me. I remember this conversation about footage, right? Because I've been working with another Chinese filmmaker about a COVID project, and you're
Oh
one of
yeah,
the
that's right. Now I
right.
remember. Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah, definitely. I think. Wait, that was when March I started talking
I
to
think it
you.
was like April. Actually, it was like, yeah, somewhere there about. It was early on. It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
early.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I was even starting from in April, I was continuously just always looking for potential license footage, as well as looking for more collaborators with 76 days. But then let's finish the. I want to keep on asking questions about our time machine. Let's just finish the story there. So just curious, you've worked in the past even as a solo director or with co-directors before, as a co-director before, right? Um, what do you think, when do you make a decision to co-direct with someone versus you want to go solo by yourself? What are the pros and cons when you make that, in terms of thinking about that decision?
Yeah, it's funny because I never really set out thinking that I would co-direct with folks, and I know a lot of documentary filmmakers, sort of is appalled by the idea of co-directing. I feel like a lot of times I ended up in these co-directing relationships because I know that the journey to make these films are always so long and lonely, and to have somebody else who is as invested in the project as you are, as I am, and is willing to kind of go a long haul, to me is really, really valuable. And I know that it's tricky in terms of dynamics, in terms of decision making. Two people, it's hard to break a tie.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's always something that I struggle with, but for some project it just makes a lot of sense. For this project, I mean, it's really more like, for us, we just decided that, because I actually initially came on as a producer, and at some point it became obvious, though, that because the film fundamentally is about a 40-something-year-old, you know entering his middle age, dealing with his parents aging, and then kind of thinking about what his legacy is, and hoping to start I mean, all those are things that I myself and people around me are so familiar with. But for Young, he was in his mid-20s, like he had that's not his life experience.
Yeah.
It just made a lot of sense that I would get much more involved, as a storyteller, as a director in this project. But for my other projects, like for Outrun, which I co-directed with Johnny Simons, it was such a huge, sprawling multinational project when we first started, and it just, I couldn't imagine doing that by myself. So
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Got it.
But I mean, how about for you? How about that? How did you guys end up, with this arrangement?
Yeah, it's really tricky because when I reach out to them, uh, I I wanted to, as soon as I saw their footage, I wanted to collaborate with them to make a film together. But since we had never met each other before, and the two of them didn't know each other, right? The two of them were filming independently at different hospitals. And the very beginning, I think it took a while for us to build up trust over WeChat, basically the voice chats on WeChat. So at the very beginning, I didn't even say, "Oh, I'm gonna license your footage." Oh, we're gonna co-direct. At the very beginning, I went up to them and say, "Okay, what you're doing? There's anything I can support? If you have any, if after you've done whatever you wanted to do, if you have footage left over, can I potentially license it to make my own film?" That's how I got my way in, because both of these are relatively new to documentary filmmaking. So in terms of thinking through, news versus character, and or which character to follow, how to structure the story, and And sometimes, as one of my co-directors, Anonymous, he's a photojournalist by training. So he can frame the shot really beautifully, and but at the same time he didn't even have a directional mic attached to his Canon 5D. He was using the same, basically the camera on the camera's mic to pick up sound.
Oh my
And he
gosh.
was picking all the time. So all these are a lot of the sort of like new filmmaker mistakes I have to really trying to help him to get over, and also like trying to secure, because Wuhan was under lockdown. I remember I tried to ship a microphone to him, but it just took over a month to even get to him. So yeah, so in the beginning, I just think I spent a lot of time really trying to position as, let's review the footage together, share the footage with me. I want to take a look, but I'm not going to do anything with the footage yet. I just want to support whatever you wanted to do. And then gradually, I think with Wei Shi, he originally wanted to make a feature-length film with the footage he shot in that single hospital. So I just said, I'm more than happy to help you produce this. But later on, as he started editing himself, playing around with it, we realized there's just no way that the footage he has is enough to sustain a feature length. That's when I think in March, I just say, okay, maybe we could consider combining footage from Anonymous as well to make a film together. So at the very beginning, it was more like a consultant or / consulting producer role for them, to help them think through, to help them strategize. But they were making most of the decision on the ground in terms of whom to film, what to capture. But I think, the role I played the most is during the edit stage, because since the two of them didn't know each other, they didn't even know how, they only know their own footage. They didn't know the other filmmakers' footage. So I basically put the whole rough cut together, and based on the rough cut, the three of us would then have still one-on-one conversations, because the two of them, I don't think we ever had a conversation with all three of us together.
I actually want to keep talking to you about this. This is actually really fascinating to me, and then in sort of surprisingly similar to my experience. I don't know why we hadn't talked about this, in the past few months. That's because you made this film like with the snap of a finger. But yeah, it was very much. I feel like there is a lot of element of mentorship, right? Of sort of guidance in these relationships, and that's exactly what my relationship was. But I actually want to talk to you more about it. So who has, because I thought with the film that it was all shot in one hospital. So there was actually two different hospitals.
Four different hospitals.
Oh wow, okay, all
Two
right.
main hospitals. It was shot primarily. Two main hospitals, but then there are two other scenes and shot at two different hospitals. Yeah.
And were you selecting those because of the characters that you found compelling in each of those situations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think during the editing process for a while, I didn't even know how to structure the film. It's really challenging, because I know from reviewing the rushes, 76 days really is about the front line, right? How people survive on the front line. A lot of the moments are extremely emotional. A lot of the character stories are really compelling. But just because during production, the situation in the hospitals were extremely chaotic. So it's not like we can, we have so many discussions that, he or she can be a main character. Why don't you keep on following them? But the thing is that character might be interesting on day one, and then day two, day three, sometimes nothing happened, or they get all of a sudden transferred out of the hospital, or they passed away. So during production, we have very little idea who may be our main character, other than the grandpa with dementia who keep on wandering in the hallway, right? And then so during editing, it was like, who are the main characters? I don't think we can go back to do pickup anymore, because the lockdown is over. And so the more traditional documentary approach in terms of how to do selects based on the character you want to track, build an arc for that character, probably doesn't apply. So in the end, it's really after watching, Frederick Wiseman's early films, after watching Ramona Diaz's Motherland. I love Ramona's Motherland, right?
I love that film.
Yeah.
I love that film too.
So after that, I was like, wow, I don't have to track main characters. I can go do a more or less a good portrayal, but tracking a timeline, like Motherland, the same thing, right? So that completely liberated me. So what I did after that was basically just pick out all the strongest scenes, line them together on a timeline, and then gradually fine tune it to make some characters surface more, to remove a lot of the characters that just appear once. So right now there's still like 4 or 5 characters that appear just once and say something and they disappear, never come back. But then, so in the editing process, I slowly, gradually fine tune that to give the sense you feel like there's some main characters, but actually those main characters, some of them only appear 3 times throughout the film.
And you edited this film, incredibly fast. How long was the process? I mean, I was, I was just really impressed um, by how quickly the pieces all came together and how coherent it all felt. I actually surprised me that you said there were 4 different hospitals. I figured like 2 maybe, but it just felt like they all very organically connected.
I think for me to build the first rough assembly / rough cut took me 2 months. It was kind of funny. Like we moved down to my in-laws house in a suburb of Atlanta. So the first 2 weeks, I went there later after my partner took it. So I was quarantined in the basement for 2 weeks. That really helped kickstart the project because I was working around the clock. And then afterwards, we have to take care of kids. I would drink a lot of wine at night to keep myself awake and continue editing until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But
They
anyway,
drink a lot of wine at night to keep yourself awake. That's
yeah,
usually
and strangely, alcohol keeps me up. But I think with this film, it's really fast editing because I didn't follow the old traditional way, try to organize my footage or even going through to make sure I don't miss anything. I don't do that. I just follow my gut instinct. This character has a strong scene, strong image. So he or she might be a character I want to pay attention to. I pick that scene out, and then I quickly look through the rest of my footage to figure out whether that character has appearing elsewhere at all, and pick those scenes out. So there are a lot of things. I'm pretty sure I missed something in the footage that could be compelling. But then I just feel like with this one, because I was going through a lot of personal emotion, missing my family. My grandpa passed away, there's guilt, and also there's Black Lives Matter. And, I mean, there's chaotic, right? Back in April and May, it was really chaos. For me, it's like editing, finding those emotional moving moments was almost like therapy, like I'm grabbing onto it. And so I say something that's truly compelling, I grab onto it, I will not let go, and just link them all together. And so, yeah, surprisingly, it happened really fast. Originally, we were hoping, Gina and we talked, we were hoping to finish the film basically by end of 2020 to finish the rough cut. But then by July, we pretty much realized we're done because it's not like they shot tons, right? I mean, there are a lot of one-off characters we know we will not use. We shot so much outside of hospitals, but they were flat, story-wise, they were flat. We know we don't want to even really pay that much attention to them. So by July, we said that we can continue tweaking it, but in terms of story, and that's it. Yeah, it's about the lockdown.
Wow. Yeah, no, I guess there is some freedom to know that this is it. It's not happening anymore. You can't shoot anymore. You cannot go find a character and do any additional things. There's something freeing about that,
Absolutely. There's a confinement, right? There's a limit.
Yeah.
You have to work within a limit. But going back to our time machine, I know you played a big role during editing. So yeah, maybe you can talk about some of the key editing challenges you face, how the shape of the film came into being.
Yeah. No, I think that it was our situation during the production sounds pretty similar. I was mainly in the U.S. Yang was a primary camera person. I did go to China for a few shoots. I shot the sequence in New York. That was me. But really, for the most part, my charge was post-production. And it's something that I feel pretty comfortable about. I started as an editor, and I love that part of the storytelling. I think for us initially, I mean, our premise is much more defined, right? It's about this family, and it's about the production of this one particular play. But initially, I really envisioned that it was going to be a two-character story of father and son, and it's really, because they had set out to collaborate, and they are, from the same family, but have this, deep-seated uh, conflict that they're, in some ways still trying to resolve. And they also are from two very different generations in China that have totally different life experiences, but are in the same field. So that all those elements were really interesting to me. But it became really immediately obvious that the father was not going to be able to kind of hold up half the film. His condition was deteriorating. He really didn't necessarily have a journey. With gonna have a lot of internal evolution in terms of the way he sees the world. He was definitely struggling with his illness. He was definitely struggling with dealing with his legacy. But those were constant, right? Like it didn't change. The struggle didn't change. So we knew that the whole thing, with the whole arc, the whole journey, to be shipped over to Ma Liang, as a single character. Throughout the film, we need to see him transform, and he did. He actually just during this period that we followed him, which happened to be a particularly active period in his personal and professional life, that we did get this evolution, in terms of his worldview, in terms of how he saw his work and how he saw his life and his family.
But did that shift in terms of the story or character focus? Did that shift happen during production, once you finish production, or even in production, kind of know, oh, it's not going to work, we have to shift focus?
Well, we knew that the father bit was not going to work because we weren't getting good scenes with the father.
That's right.
We were worried that that we didn't have enough with Ma Liang either, because we just didn't quite know what to focus on.
Yeah.
It feels like they were nuanced struggles, but important struggles. The general scope of the film is set. It's going to be about the production of the play. It's going to be about Alzheimer's and the family. But what we didn't know is like, well, what about it for Ma Liang that what is that particular, what are these big elements, or what is these big transformations that we wanted to follow? Like, do we want to just really focus on his struggle with his artwork? Do we want to focus on him taking care of his family? But when it's all said and done, it's actually a very much of an internal struggle for him. It's actually about him facing his own mortality. And it actually took us a long time to get there. At the beginning, we really thought that was very much external of what he does, with the other people. But when we start to kind of turn that around and focus on him, seeing himself and looking at how his life is going, stuff started to make sense. The trajectory that I think that we ended up using was very much it's almost like the 4 or 5 stages of grieving. I think that the first one is Ma Liang finding out this his father's illness, and it was denial, right? It was him really trying to do everything he can, thinking, oh, we're going to do this play, and then if we do this play, then he won't get any worse, and we can preserve this relationship the way I want to, right? And when that doesn't happen, it becomes one of desperation of him sort of trying every which way, everything he can to not let the train, run away too fast. And when that doesn't work, it was one of, sort of depression and helplessness, which is actually around the time when the play came out, and he realizes that, yes, the play is done, but it didn't necessarily achieve what he set out to achieve. And then at the end is this transformation to acceptance of him realizing that there are certain things in life that he cannot influence, and what he can do is to find beauty in it and to celebrate it. So that was eventually the struggle that we arrived at for Ma Liang's internal journey. And then we also lay on top of that very much this story of an artist and midlife, examining his work and his process and the meaning of his career and the meaning of his life.
But so like maybe new filmmakers who are not that familiar with how to do post-production, just to drill a little bit on that. So when you said you shifted from the old, more external looking story structure into a more internal looking, what does it exactly mean? Is it, just basically have to do different rough cuts? You look at the rough cut, figure out what doesn't work, and try to continuously adjust your cut to highlight the key points you were just talking about?
Well, I think that for us, hmm, there's definitely a lot of that. I mean, the editing process took a long time, and we were stopping and going. So it's almost like the opposite of you sort of finishing it in a matter of 4 months. For us, I think we edited, I don't even know how long, maybe 10 months, but over a 2-year period. And um, we had a rough cut, and then I would work with an editor, Bob, who was in Beijing at the time. And then I would actually send him these virtual index card layouts of structure. It's like, well, this is what the structure should be, having seen the scene. And then he would do it, and then he'll come back to me, and I would look at it again, and I would do that again. So it was a lot of back and forth. Um, I think that in terms of the shifting, a lot of that has to do with us really kind of digging into some of the nuances of the character. Like for a while, we were using a lot of interviews with Ma Liang, and sort of trusting him at his word. And it didn't necessarily work very well. People kept saying, well, it feels very distant, that he, even though the words are coming out of his mouth, we feel like he's not really telling us the truth, which actually I think happens a lot with characters. Like people say things maybe they want the world to believe, but maybe deep down they don't really believe. Or if you know the person at all, that that's not what they really think, but that's just their character, their personality to do that. So so I think a lot of our work is about dealing with that, and then trying to come up with devices that, so we can not take his word sort of at its surface value, that we need to present the film as how it's really, how people around him is seeing what's happening with him, and ultimately, which is what we want the audience to see, is sort of the more objective truth, instead of something that he sees as what's happening. So that process kind of ultimately led us to using this sort of letter to the child device that we had in the film, where
that's a beautiful device. It's a very
to us that it was really a bit of a magic, sort of a silver bullet, to have come up with that particular device. It solved a lot of issues for us to constructing Ma Liang's internal journey. So yeah.
When did you know you could stop? When did you know you had the ending of the film?
I have a bad habit of finishing my own film. Well, no, I always end up editing my own film at the end. I always end up cutting. No matter how great an editor I work with, I just always end up having to sort of polish it myself to make sure that I know everything that I want to try is has been tried, basically. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's always more to do. I mean, I know it's a cliche about film being abandoned, not finished, and this one very much felt like that. Actually, you know what? I actually knew. I know what happened. I started to do things that was breaking it. I started to do things that was making it worse. The last couple months when we're editing, I mean, the film was in a pretty good shape already when I took it over, but I felt like I did a good job of making, like, especially the last 20 minutes or last 15 minutes that we spent a lot of time with that. But then when I went beyond that and started to move some stuff around, it was starting to lose some of its power. So that I knew it was time to quit. So how about for you?
I don't know. I mean, at that time, I think we did test screenings. It's just really interesting. I went to the Atlanta. I was in Atlanta, so I got in touch with the Plaza Cinema, which is an independent art house film cinema in Atlanta, and the owner allowed me to do a test screening for 3 people in a huge theater sitting with 500 seats. After screening that film, I guess I did a test screening like that. I also did another backyard test screening, open air test screening. After that, I feel like people were saying good things. I mean, they were not bored. They were following the story. That's one indication I think I was doing a decent job. And secondly, like with you, I started experimenting with it. I just make it worse, make it slower, make it longer. And that time, because there's some character, like for each character we have a couple of scenes, I really want to save them. I keep on trying to move them to a different place, but every time it just breaks the flow of the film, right? And that time it's like, okay, I'm done. I mean, I can keep on doing this useless work, but it's not going to make the film better. Yeah.
Well, it also feels like I think there's a huge advantage for you to get the story out. It was such an urgent story that, having the pressure of time is probably helpful in
No. To be perfectly honest, that's a secondary consideration. We just got lucky. We said, okay, we have a rough cut, right? We'll send it out to TIFF and see if TIFF takes it. We're just very lucky. TIFF took it, and then once TIFF said they're taking it, I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop editing, because we actually had more time to continue edit until another month of editing time. But after we heard back from TIFF, which is I think in early July or mid-July. And I just started doing fine tuning of the film rather than trying to do any more structural change at all. Yeah.
Huh. Wow. I wish all my films could work that efficiently.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out a way to make more films like 76 days. It's a very emotionally intense process, but at the same time, it just feel like, wow, I'm getting things done. And then, it's I feel really productive during the past year, during last year. Yeah.
So how is the film doing now? I mean, I think you're having a pretty wide release right now, which is very exciting.
It is very exciting. I think Dogwolf, MTV Documentary Films is still doing virtual cinemas in North America. Based on what we heard, the film is performing well at the virtual box office. So a lot of the cinemas are continuing to show the film. We don't know yet what MTV's plan is with streaming and transactional VOD down the road. We haven't been told. But internationally, Dogwolf has released it on demand. A few other countries are doing TV broadcasts, and then yeah. So I'm pretty happy. But then at the same time, it's always a challenge to get viewers to watch a film about COVID while people are still living through COVID, right? So that's been a challenge. So a lot of feedback we're getting is that, oh, I didn't want to watch the film. Once I watched it, it's amazing. I'm like, okay, tell your friends to convince them to watch the film. Yeah.
But I feel like that's so much of a challenge with documentaries in general, is just butt in seats. Like usually, when you convince people to sit down and watch it, they have a positive experience of viewing it. I mean, it's actually interesting. I've been reading a lot about the idea of attention economy. Now that it's not about the supply, it is about the attention. That not about the supply of the content. It's about the attention.
Absolutely, right. Yeah, right now we're competing with everything with Netflix, especially right now, documentary in virtual screening platforms a lot of the time. So yeah, it's challenging to convince people that this is a worthwhile subject. You should watch it instead of some comedy on some other streaming platforms.
Yeah, no, yes. I probably shouldn't reveal this, but I'm like totally got obsessed with Crash Landing on You, the K drama, the Korean drama. You don't even know what it is.
It's on Netflix. It's
on Netflix. Yeah,
it's about body.
It's about a South Korean woman who accidentally, in a hang gliding accident, landed in North Korea and falls in love with the soldier that saved her. So anyway, okay. I don't think we should talk more about that.
Yeah, I haven't been able to watch. I haven't been able to watch too many films. Right now, I'm just catching up on the docs.
Yeah. But I mean, I think ironically, this has been for me. This has been a really exciting year for docs, and there are just a lot of really great films out there.
Yeah, it's amazing because one of the reporter asked me, said, "What do you think is the reason? What do you think is the reason this year?" I think even like take COVID out of consideration, 2020 was an amazing year for docs.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think is the reason? I have no idea.
I have no idea because one person told me it's because the extended what you call it, the awards qualifying time. So, but I don't think that's
No, I
necessarily
don't
the
think that's
case,
it.
right? I
No,
don't
no.
think that's
I feel
it.
like the great films that I've seen they're not like last minute surprises, right? Like
Yeah,
they
they've been in
have been
production for a
around.
long
Yeah,
time, right? Yeah,
yeah. They've been around. So
yeah.
no, I'm super excited about, all the films that are out this year. I think it's gonna be, a difficult year to, to select the best of the best. So whatever that is.
Absolutely. Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Yeah, it's also like quite exciting. We have such a strong Asian American cohort, right? Who have films being qualified.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's ADOC is doing a panel for Sundance that we're gonna kind of talk about Asian American stories. It's interesting to see the diversity of Asian and Asian American stories out there, and what's getting attention and what's not. But I am I'm really excited to see such a diverse slate, a diverse collection of Asians and Asian American films out there, and I hope that this is sort of the beginning of this very productive time for us, that there will be more and more of our stories out there, and then being more and more prominent, not necessarily just kind of being on the side, being on the margins, but really being in the center.
Yep. Cool. It's been great chatting with you, Leo.
Yeah, no, same here.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see each other again soon, right? In person.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. Once you get vaccinated, you'll fly back, or I get vaccinated, I'll fly to